Hello, everyone. Welcome on into OneSoccer.ca. Annie Petrillo, Gareth Wheeler, Oliver Platt. It was a very busy weekend. We had the Canadian Premier League in action. We also had the women's national team back in action for the first time since April, playing in a friendly against South Korea. They're only tune-up before a very important tournament that's coming up in July. We have been saying this for a long time now. It's very, 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 very important because it is the CONCACAF Championship, which acts as a qualifier for the 2023 World Cup, and it acts as a qualifier for the 2024 Olympics and the inaugural Gold Cup for the women. So all very exciting things happening in that particular tournament, which kicks off July 5th right here on One Soccer in Monterrey, Mexico. So the Canadians, they take on South Korea, BMO Field, Toronto. This one ends goose eggs on both sides, gentlemen. Nobody scored in this one. A couple chances. You know, the Canadians did create some chances. South Korea had one where it just, whizzed by Kaylin Sheridan just outside, missing the post. But how would you grade Canada's performance here, Ollie, against their opponent?
No better than a C, I don't think you can say, really. I think they dominated the game. I don't think they gave up very much at all defensively, and they did create enough chances to win the game, albeit not as many chances as obviously we'd like to see Canada create against a team like South Korea. I think you also have to put it into context that it's the first game. It's a warm-up game, right? Is that you play these matches for a reason, to shake the rust off and get yourself ready for tournaments. That being said, there's clearly still some concerns there in terms of, can this team break down deep, low blocks, determined defenses? What's that going to mean against a team like Mexico, who's a similar kind of world ranking to South Korea? And we know whether it's a semi-final, whether it's an Olympic play-in game, that's going to be an absolutely crucial game for Canada if they do come up against Mexico. So I still think there's reasons to believe that Canada is in some ways more suited to playing against better teams than they are against teams like this, which could bode well against the United States. But clearly in these kinds of scenarios, there's still a lot to work on for Bev Priestman.
You're a pretty easy grader, Ollie. I wish that you were my teacher while I was in school a long time ago, by the way. I'm old. You can't give him any more than a D plus, C minus at best. And that's just based upon standards. It's not based upon performance. Canada are now Olympic champions. The way that we look at them should change with that title, with that honor. This isn't a team that's going to sneak up on anyone. This is a top, 6 or 7 team in the world right now. When you play like teams like this at home, you should go on and win those games. And that's why you come away from this game saying, we understand what this team's all about. It's not all bad. I'm not trying to portray a bad story when it comes to this team, but the performance isn't what you'd expect heading into, as you said, Andy, a significant tournament for this group. Simply put, we know that this team doesn't concede many goals at all. They are excellent defensively in terms of personnel, in terms of structure. But at some point, when you play the best of the best, you can't just lean on that for 90 minutes every game. You're going to have to go out there and find a goal. And, what we've seen over these last 3 games, they did score goals against Nigeria, but in honest, it was a makeshift Nigeria side that was struggling for numbers coming in. You came away with a win and a draw. Then you draw at home, 3 home games, in terms of your preparation for this tournament. It's like when Christine Sinclair doesn't play, it's like, you just ask yourself, well, who's going to provide the goals? Where are they going to come from? And the best chance you saw in those highlights there came right at the death on a set piece. So that's what's difficult to get past. But at the end of the day, it might not matter. Honestly, it may not matter because Canada is a soft group in this tournament. Top 2 qualify, for the World Cup. In terms of finishing in the group, who's going to beat them? Panama, Costa Rica? I just can't see it happening. Then it goes on to just Olympic qualification. You obviously want to go out and win this championship, but World Cup qualification is absolute priority. And I can't see them missing out even if they don't play at their best. So that's where we are right now with this team. It's just, I don't think we've learned much whatsoever. It's very much the same group, the same team that played at the Olympics, and it's going to rely on these same individuals to go out there and make a difference come this tournament to potentially go on and win it, which they do have a chance to win, by the way.
Yeah, this is very tricky because, again, this is a team that hasn't been together since April. And, even Bev Priestman, she called it clunky, right? Because you're coming together. Some players, are not actually playing because their seasons are done. Really, the NWSL players are the ones who are playing. So you kind of have this mishmash of in form, not in form, haven't played together since April. So it is hard. But I think goal scoring and defense have been topics that have been with this team for the last few years. We know they're strong defensively. Where can they get the goals from? Because they grinded it out even at the Olympics. By no means did they blow the doors off anybody either when it came to goal scoring.
We won 2
And
games.
so, yeah, so I mean, we're sitting here going, where are the goals going to come from? But in a roundabout way, I guess what I'm saying is you got one game before this, major championship where players haven't been together since April, some in form, some out of form. So I guess it's kind of tough. I'll put you on the spot either way, though, Ollie. But based on that performance, what kind of confidence does it give you, or just what does it tell you maybe that this team needs to work on before July 5th kickoff?
I don't think it changes my level of confidence too much. I still think they'll be in the top 2 teams at this tournament, and they'll get the Olympic and obviously the World Cup berths that they need. I'm not at a point where I'm really worried about their ability to do that, even with an improving Mexican side. But the big one for me, the big takeaway, if there is one out of this game, is that Christine Sinclair is still irreplaceable for this team. Not just in terms of the goal scoring, which is obviously, she's the all-time top goal scorer, so that's obvious. But also just the link-up play, like her ability to come off the front and just combine with the midfield. No one else in the Canadian team at all can do that in the way she does it at centre forward. So that's she's still someone that they can't get away without. I think Prince is probably, for me, the best alternative to her, and I'm not sure she was fully fit, so maybe it could have been better if she was in the side as well. But Sinclair is still so massive for all sorts of reasons, and without her yesterday, we just saw like Canada created nothing through the middle of the pitch, right? There was no real interplay in and around the penalty area in the central areas of the pitch. It was all out wide. And that's really what kind of they resort to essentially when Sinclair's not in the team. So I still do think as well, as much as there's obviously a need to improve a lot of different areas of the attacking phase of the game, it's a completely different side when Sinclair plays.
Look, Canada is good enough. I'm not sure you really know the form of anyone right now, but Canada is good enough to go on and win this tournament. It's a United States team that's going through a little bit of a remake. Some younger players are coming through. I don't think that this is the best version of the U.S. women's national team that we'll see in the next few years, even though they have incredible depth, incredible talent within that group. Mexico's an interesting team. Mexico's the other team. They're in the U.S. group. They beat and drew Canada, I believe, in the 2 games that they played just a few months back. They're an interesting team, but I still don't think that they're on the level as the Olympic champion Canadian teams, right? Like, if you play Mexico, you should go on and expect to beat Mexico. That should be the expectation right now. I think that they are vastly improved. I think that they are improving, but they're not the Olympic champions. So, yeah, Canada can still go out and win this competition. Look, the form going in, like you said, Andy, there's been one warm-up here, a couple warm-ups the previous month. I think the U.S. is playing 2 warm-up games heading into this tournament, playing Colombia. I think that Mexico's playing 2 as well against Peru. So we just have this one game to kind of go off of, and then the internal competition within the team, and then getting some of the players like Sinclair healthy enough to play a significant role at this tournament. That is paramount. But based on the pedigree in this Canada team, there shouldn't be any concern despite a lackluster performance on the weekend.
Yeah, and a reminder, Christine Sinclair, she was available off the bench, but she picked up a knock with Portland. So obviously Bev Priestman not wanting to push it in a friendly, wants to make sure she's ready for July 5th. So that's a big tournament coming up for the Canadian women. And as you can see there, so that will begin on One Soccer taking on Trinidad Tobago, followed by Panama on July 8th. And then the final group game will go July 11th. What's important to note, as you guys have mentioned, the top 2 in each group, so the top 4 qualify for the World Cup. The winner of the tournament qualifies for the Olympics and Gold Cup. If Canada finishes second, which they've done the last few editions in the previous format, this particular time they will still have a chance to go into a playoff. Second and third teams do that, but of course the Canadians would like to avoid that. Unfortunately for the Canadian men under 20 in their championship to qualify for the FIFA under 20 World Cup came to an end at the round of 16. It went into extra time. It went into penalties. Heartbreak for them. Ollie, how disappointing is it for Canada to get knocked out in the round of 16? And once again, I mean, a major tournament they're not going to be a part of.
Yeah, it's very disappointing, and it's a very disappointing overall performance. Look, Canada should not be losing to Guatemala and Cuba. Those results just aren't really good enough. I know this was a penalty shootout, but you should still expect to beat those teams. But I also can't say I'm hugely surprised by the outcomes and by the fact that this Canadian team was a bit vulnerable. I think maybe that maybe there's a little bit of an expectation that the men's team has had so much success. So now, the U20 teams, the U17, whatever, they should be following suit and competing with the United States and Mexico. And it's just not there yet. And it's going to take time, and it's going to take real investment and building of these programs until we get there. Like I think it's really important not to confuse what the senior men's team has done with some overall kind of growth of the program, which I don't think has happened yet. I don't think that we've qualified for the World Cup and finished top of CONCACAF because of some grand 20-year master plan to build this program into a powerhouse. I think we did it because we have a once in a lifetime generation of players, and probably the best coach that the Canadian national team on either side has ever seen, and it's all come together in a perfect storm. Now I think we've got to take that success and try and build the rest of it in terms of U23, U20, the whole program, player development, all of those different things. I don't think the success that the men have had has happened because all of that has been building and growing, and the investment has been happening for the last 10 or 20 years. It just hasn't. So we're still at a point where I think these younger programs have a lot of catching up to do. And hopefully that can happen now with World Cup money, with the kind of investment that we might be able to see in this program over the next decade or so.
I'm not sure I entirely agree with that, Ollie, because I think if you look at the players that weren't there, then arguably Canada's top under 20 team weren't playing in this tournament.
But that's
I'm
never going to
not,
happen.
but
The best
lot.
U20 players don't play. Like US didn't have their best players either. You need to have the depth of players.
I understand that. But at the same time, you had a Jaquil Marshall-Rutty, you had a Kosi Thompson, you had some of these players in that should have played, but circumstance kept them out of the team. Like, these aren't players that I'm talking about that are playing with the senior men's national team. I'm talking about players who were unable to play for a number of different reasons. And a number of these Canadian players, I'm not making excuses for them, by the way. A number of these Canadian players, well, it's going to sound like it anyways. A number of these Canadian players also were dramatically affected by COVID regulations in this country, keeping them off the field for the better part of the last 2 years. Like, a lot of these players weren't playing, whether it was USL, whatever league that they were playing in, they simply weren't playing enough football compared to some of these other countries. And that's at a detriment as well. And in a tournament like this, I think we learned a lot. Like, some players look like they fit in, and some players look like they need to take the next step. And I largely feel like the players who are playing CPL and playing against men, like grown men, not reserve teams, but men on a regular basis, are that much more advanced than players playing in academies, playing against youth players. So I think that we have something to learn in terms of how we go about building teams. And there's a number of different forces that pull the selection in a number of different ways. But I by no means think that this was our best group of under 20s. So is it a priority to go on and play the under 20 World Cup and Olympic qualification? Absolutely. But right now, because of the limitations of the association and resources being funneled in all different kinds of directions, like women qualifying for the World Cup, massive priority right now. The men going to a World Cup is a massive priority right now. And that's where we're at, unfortunately. And that's where I think your argument comes into play about the resources and how they're being allocated.
Right. That's all I'm saying. Is I'm not saying these are all bad players and none of them have a chance of playing for the senior team. I don't believe that at all. But I think you compare the state of whether it's U20, U17, U23, whichever one you want to. We're not at the United States' level in that regard yet. We're not at Mexico's level in the way that we now are with the senior team. And that's where I think the investment needs to go to catch up the whole program. And I don't think we should confuse senior success with saying that the entire Canada soccer program is at the level of, the traditionally big nations in CONCACAF. Yeah.
No, there's still gaps in terms of recruitment in the development process. But what we've seen in terms of the young players come through the MLS academies and now the young players that are playing in the Canadian Premier League, there's a massive safety net that wasn't there before. And the players that are coming through these academies and playing at that level, like teenagers achieving right now, within the Canadian setup, it's unlike anything that we've experienced before. You have Urban Peppel scoring another brace. He scored in 4 consecutive games for Cavalry. He's 19 years of age. Like, he could have been playing in this tournament. Like, there's so many cases that you can point to of players that could have, would have, should have been there, but weren't. And that's where we're at right now. So look, the under 20, they played about 2 games. Everything kind of seems like it's thrown together. I think you're right. From an organizational perspective, that pathway in a COVID-free environment will be a lot clearer, and these players will play more together and advance through the ranks a lot better together. This team was a lot different than the under 17 team that played at the World Cup a few years ago. A lot different. So some consistency and continuity will do the young players very good going forward.